We're getting ready to start here. Well, good morning. My name is Cheryl Magnuson, and I am the chairwoman for the McLean County Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I am so thankful that you have chosen to join us this morning for our annual State of the State. I am also happy to see all of you and your smiley faces this morning compared to last year's only online event. We have just under 100 attending in person this morning and another 75 registered online. So on behalf of McLean County Chamber of Commerce, I welcome you all, both in person and online this morning. I would like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you are able to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would first like to welcome and thank our legislators for being present with us this morning and taking their time to give their insight and answers concerning the future of McLean County communities as well as our state. Next, it is with great thanks to our sponsors that programming has been brought to our membership free of charge. This includes both in-person events like today's State of the State, as well as our online town hall meetings and member education programs. All programs have been recorded and are available on the Chamber's member-only Facebook page or the video resource library on our website. Today's session is being recorded and will be available on the video resource library within the next 24 hours. I would like to recognize our sponsors. Our Sapphire sponsors include AFNI, Central Illinois Regional Airport, Comcast Business, Invenergy, State Farm Insurance. Our Topaz sponsors include Bloomington Normal Community Bank, Carl Broman Medical Center, Coldwell Banker Commercial Megan O'Neill Rogozinski, and INB. Our Aquamarine sponsor is Nicor Gas. And our final sponsor, I would like to thank Illinois State University for hosting us back on campus, as well as serving our digital host for online attendees today. Thank you to all of our sponsors for your commitment to the event today and your interest in the Chamber's advocacy efforts for all of our members. Can I please have a round of applause for our sponsors? It is now my pleasure to introduce my friend and fellow Rotarian, Dr. Larry Dietz, President of Illinois State University. Since becoming Illinois State University's 19th president in March 2014, the vision and leadership of Dr. Dietz has propelled this institution to new heights of success and prominence. As you know, Dr. Dietz will soon be retiring, and we want to take this opportunity to share with him our sincere gratitude for his leadership, dedication, and perseverance to the success of Illinois State University as an institution and to the success of the faculty, staff, and most importantly, the students. We are honored to have him join us this morning. Please help me both welcome and thank Dr. Larry Dietz, President of Illinois State University.
Well, thank you very much, Cheryl. And let me start by saying, please pardon my voice. Whatever's in the air, I have a head full of it this morning. So please excuse that. Thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. In interest of time, I've kind of scripted myself here this morning so I can stay on time, but we're, as a university, proud to be a partner with the McLean County Chamber of Commerce to bring you this annual State of the State update. I look forward to this each year, and I plan to come back and in retirement from the bleacher section and listen to this in future years. So I'm delighted to be a part of it today. It's simply marvelous to see everybody without a mask and being able to shake some hands after 15 challenging months that we've all been through. But it's really great to get together in person and have some conversation. I also want to welcome our local Illinois representatives and senators, and thank you, along with Governor Pritzker, for navigating the state through the most daunting health crisis in our lifetimes. Speaking as the convener of the Illinois Public University Presidents and Chancellors, holding higher education's fiscal year 2022 budgets level is a huge win. I've been the president whenever we've had a time where we haven't had a budget. And I've been a president during a time when we've had a budget, and the latter is a lot better. While all of us obviously would like to see increases, we're delighted to have a flat budget. And thank you very much for that. particularly having a flat budget when you factor in the extra state costs associated with the coronavirus pandemic. Our students will also benefit from steady MAP and AIM High funding. And speaking for Illinois State, the budget will keep the university strong and stable. Those are two words that you hear me talk about quite a bit throughout the next academic year. So again, thanks for your many efforts. A brief update on the university. We look forward to a back to normal academic year with face-to-face instruction, full residence halls, and vibrant activity on the quad and in all of our university facilities. Early in this calendar year, we are a bit concerned about fall enrollment as students and their families waited for COVID mitigation changes before making college decisions. But as mitigation started to ease, we were pleased to see our applications and enrollment deposits back at our normal, robust levels. I do want to emphasize that despite the scourge of the pandemic, Illinois State accomplished a great deal during the 2021 academic year. The university enrolled 20,720 students, and over 93% of them were from Illinois. It's the third largest number of any of the public universities. Adding May 2020 graduates, December 2020 graduates, and May 2021 graduates, the number totaled 9,000 students that we graduated, with most graduates ready to become working, tax-paying, and engaged citizens of the state. Our university points of pride, something that we call the metrics of excellence, remained in the nation's top echelon for graduation and retention rates, programmatic quality rankings, value for investment, and military friendliness. In fact, we actually exceeded our consistent high performance in several areas, which is a true testament to the quality and the unyielding commitment of our students, our faculty, our staff, and our alumni. We also added to our leadership cabinet the university's first assistant to the president for diversity and inclusion. And Dr. Doris Houston is here somewhere. I know she came in, she's in the back here. So we're delighted to have Doris as part of the cabinet. We also created the President's Diversity and Inclusion Council to address national, statewide, and local issues of equity and social justice. This fall, we will open a new multicultural center, and we've also completed the revitalization of the Bone Student Center, the facility most used by the university and McLean County residents, and contributes to an annual university financial impact of this community of over $830 million. Illinois State also completed its second comprehensive fundraising campaign called Redbird Rising. And I know many of you in this room wrote checks to that, and we're very, very appreciative of that. If you are sitting there and say, gosh darn, I missed that, we'll still take a check. You know, that still would be okay. But we raised over $180 million, and our goal was $150 million. And we raised it, that 150 a year early. So thanks very much for your participation in that. Our alumni friends and our corporate partners really, really did us proud on all of that. As you also know, Dr. Terry Kinsey has been appointed at Illinois State University's 20th president, and she begins her duties on July 1. Dr. Kinsey comes to ISU from Western Michigan University, where she has served as the Vice President for Research and Innovation. She is bright, energetic, and with her research and STEM background, I think she will be a great fit for the future of the university, a future which includes a College of Engineering. We have also had weekly Zoom meetings, and I know that she's excited about beginning her work at ISU. She and I have pledged to make this the smoothest transition that people have ever heard about in higher education. And as we talked about that, we said, well, how do we do that? And so we committed to every Thursday morning to having Zoom calls. And we've done that, and they've been packed full of interesting information about the institution, but also we've had a lot of fun in the process. So I think she and her husband, Scott, are going to fit in here like a glove, and I'm very excited to welcome her. I certainly hope that you, and I know that you'll provide Dr. Kinsey the same amazing level of support that you've afforded me during my Illinois State career. I also, we've had some additional staff that you probably haven't met given the pandemic. So we have a few other folks here that I want to briefly introduce too. Kyle Brennan is our new Director of Athletics. Kyle's in the back. If you haven't met him, please say hello to him. Dr. Andave Tarhuli is our Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost. Andave joined us last July. Kyle joined us in January. I'm trying to think of other folks that you may not have met. Mike Gebicki is in facilities and planning, relatively new. Mike's back here. Dan Stevens has been with us for a little while now, our VP for Finance and Planning, and LJ Levester Johnson is here, our VP for Student Affairs, and he's in the back as well. So I appreciate all of that. I didn't see Pat this morning, Pat Bickerman, our VP for Advancement. I think he had another commitment this morning. But as you might know, my wife Marlene and I plan to retire in this community. It's with mixed emotions, frankly, that I retire from higher education. But January of this year marked a 50-year career in higher education. And that's across 3 states and 4 institutions, and one of those institutions twice. And so I'm also concluding 10 years here at Illinois State and in my 8th year as president. We're going to remain in the Twin Cities. As soon as we finish up remodeling work in a house that we purchased over near Ewing Manor, that's where we plan to move. We're probably going to be homeless for about a month in between there because it's not ready to go yet. But good friends have decided they'd let us do some house sitting as they summer in Wisconsin. But we look forward to remaining active in the university and greater community, and of course, spending much more time with friends and family. Marlene and I have both enjoyed our travel. We'll be doing some of that. We have a relatively new grandson that we visited this last weekend down in Kansas City, and so we're doing a little bit more of that. But we plan on staying put here in Bloomington Normal and spending more time with each of you. We leave the day-to-day Illinois State campus life with literally thousands of cherished memories of students, faculty, staff, alumni, and friends. Every success that has come my way has been a team effort. And those individuals that I just introduced you to represent the leadership team of 3,600 people on the campus, faculty and staff, who work very hard every day to serve that nearly 21,000 student population that we have. So everybody pitches in and does the best they can to make sure that everybody is successful. So I've often said, though, that the college experience is relatively simple. And I know my colleague and friend, Keith Cornell, the president of Heartland Community College. And Keith, where are you? Back over here. We share the same idea that the college experience is really about changing lives. Simple as that. Pretty complex about how you do it, but simple as that. I hope that my service has helped change some lives for the better. And I know that my ISU experience has changed my life and Marlene's life in countless and remarkable ways. So again, thank you for coming today. Thanks again to our legislative leaders. And of course, go you Redbirds. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Larry. On behalf of the McLean County Chamber of Commerce, we would again like to thank you and take this opportunity to present you with a gift of our most sincere thanks for all you have done for the community. And now we'll turn it over to Charlie.
All right, thank you, Cheryl, very much. And President Deans, thank you. We'll be forever grateful for your leadership in our community. Legislators, if you please come forward, we'll go ahead and start this morning's program. And I'll start with a few opening comments as you make your way forward. You can have any chair, you have your own microphone or your own bottle of water. We don't have to share anything this morning. We're good to go. With the lasting effects of COVID-19 over the last 15 months, I think it's clear this has been a trying time for all of us. But considering today's focus, we're looking at the effects on business, both large and small. Over the last year, your chamber has written letters, made calls, served on panel discussions, and diligently convened with our members, elected officials, and fellow chambers of commerce across the state, working to find ideas for solutions and resolve for our businesses. Now, as we near the entrance of phase 5 of the Restore Illinois plan, business is open, but not without issues. Albeit supply chain issues, workforce shortages, or the new housing crisis, our path forward is not without challenge. And those challenges are what we're going to talk about this morning. So I'd like to introduce each of our lawmakers. If you'd raise your hand when I introduce you, please. But first, we are happy to welcome Senator Sally Turner for the first time with us, representing the 44th District. Welcome, Senator Turner. Also rejoining us, Senator Jason Barackman, representing the 53rd District. Senator Chapin Rose, representing the 51st District. Representative Dan Brady with the 105th District. And as our guest this morning, Representative Tom Bennett, representing the 106th District. Representative Bennett will be joining the McLean County delegation following the recently signed redistricting. Thank you, Tom, for joining us this morning, and thank you to all of our electeds for being here this morning, bright and early in this beautiful facility with all these smiling faces in person has been talked about, and all of our friends online that are joining us today too. So to get started, I've randomly identified one person to lead a response to each of our questions. Please respond knowing that others have the opportunity to respond as well. These questions have been submitted from our membership, and they are all ready to hear your thoughts. So we have 8 questions total, and somewhere I have I'm not checking my Facebook page, my timer. We have 5 minutes per question. And at the end of that 5 minutes, we'll need to move on. So with each lead, please provide your response, any follow-up questions or comments from you, and then we'll move on to the next question at the end of 5 minutes. So the first name drawn out of the hat is Senator Rose. The federal government designated $8.1 billion of additional coronavirus fiscal assistance for the state of Illinois. The approved state budget allocates a portion of that funding in fiscal year 22, yet the budget also levies $660 million of new taxes exclusively on employers. Regardless of your opinion whether the federal government funding was a good idea or not, how do you think the $8.1 billion should be allocated as to not result in new taxes on our employers?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to pay my thanks to President Dietz. He's been great to work with, and this is something that's kind of behind the scenes in Springfield, but there was a bill earlier in the spring that could have been hugely detrimental to higher education in the state. And I want to tell the folks in this room, the President Dietz and the U of I president were the only two that had any courage to stand up to what it was, and the bill fundamentally changed after they did that, and it would have been really, really bad for all of higher ed. So thank you for what you've done and what you will continue to do. Yeah, so really the budget isn't just 8.1 billion in federal Biden bucks. They actually had another $8 billion over what was expected from last year. So for this budget year, they had $16.1 billion in unanticipated revenues. And yet they still raised $666 billion in taxes on business. Now, what wasn't done, and this gets to the root of your question, what wasn't done is 2 things in my opinion. We have a massive problem in the unemployment insurance trust fund. And everyone in this room knows what that means. The folks reading the paper tomorrow, the folks watching this on TV probably have no clue what the unemployment insurance trust fund is. Well, that's the unemployment fund that gets paid when someone goes off and is put on out of work. And we've had a lot of those during COVID. They draw down, that check comes from the unemployment insurance trust fund. There's a $5 billion deficit minimum in that fund, and it's going to continue to grow. And as you as employers know, you end up paying that. That comes out of your pocket. So the suggestion that was made by, I know the Senate Republicans, and I'm fairly certain the House Republicans shared in that as well, was that a chunk of the so-called Biden bucks be used to shore that up to offset what will ultimately hit employers in this state. And by the way, when I say employers, let's be honest, that's going to pass through to the employees. It's going to pass through the employees in the form of employees not being rehired. It's going to pass through to employees not being hired. And it's going to pass through to mom and pop businesses who, coming out of COVID, will not be able to reopen their doors. That's who ultimately bears the burden and pays the price of the unemployment insurance trust fund tax. So there's the Democrats did not spend all of the 8.1 billion. However, they only allocated 100 million, just $100 million to what is at least a $5 billion problem. And that's today. And over time, that's going to grow. It will also continue to grow because of the enhanced benefits that are being given. So I think the Republicans would have done that differently. The other thing I would share with you, the Republicans would have done differently is Illinois is 47th in the nation developing disabled funding. We had a chance to finally remove ourselves from some federal lawsuits and maybe make some headway and not be one of the worst states in the country in how we deal with the folks who really do need our help, who we all have a moral conviction to help. And yet, despite being 47th in the nation in development disability funding, the Democrats left town without fully funding development disabled, without getting us out of that federal lawsuit, and just going to keep us in court forever, which of course, at the end of the day, doesn't help anybody who actually needs those services. So there's just 2 examples of things that probably we would have done differently. On a positive note, we're all in agreement that we're going to fully fund K-12. That's a positive. As Larry mentioned, despite everything happening in COVID, higher education is relatively flat funded. We're going to pay down the debt, the short-term debt that was taken out from the federal government at the outset of COVID. That's going to be a positive. But again, two biggies, one for our employer community, which again, at the end of the day, people hear employer community, they don't get that transfers into the employees. That comes jobs. That's the people who don't get their jobs back. So we think there's way more work to be done on that front. And then there's always more work to be done to help those who truly need help in the development of the disabled community. Does anybody have anything I forgot?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. We have one more minute on this question.
Now we know why he has 4 waters in front of him.
Thank you, Sally.
One thing I would ask too is that while we're speaking, make sure this is being streamed and recorded. So make sure you use your microphones when we talk so we capture everything. If there's no additional comments, we'll move to the next question, which goes to Representative Brady. Still talking on the topic of budget. One of our members asked this: a statewide coalition of Illinois businesses and organizations in the arts, culture, and arts education called on the Illinois General Assembly to dedicate $500 million from the state's federal American Rescue Plan funds to help the creative sector that was disproportionately affected by the mandatory closures due to COVID. Lawmakers did not include any direct relief to arts organizations in the current state budget. And since the revenues came in considerably higher than anticipated, how do you think the state can best commit relief funding to the nonprofits and tourism businesses that are a vital part of the state's economy?
Thank you, Charlie, and thanks to everyone this morning for being out and those that are tuning in with us this morning. And I too, Larry, want to congratulate you and have enjoyed the years of working together and the future that you're going to help in your retirement side of things. You're far from done yet. So thank you very much. And it's great to be with all my colleagues here this morning. In regards to the question, from the business side of things, there was about $587 million. It was directed into things across the line, everything from motel, hotel to different businesses from the Federal CARES Act money, specifically into the tourism side of things and the museums that I know Beth Hussman is very concerned with. I don't know if you want to say the ink's not quite dry on where some of this money will be directed to. And so that is something that holds possibility that more money could be directed into that. But I wish that there had been more, and I wish the $500 million had been specific as to where it was supposed to go. But any aspect of what we can do of trying to direct those monies back into the museums, back into the arts, there is going to be money that's going to be directed in there. It's just a matter of trying to identify and earmark it directly more.
Any additional thoughts to add to that question? And like that, we're back on time. Next question. We're going to write that. We're going to notate that. And that's, you got us back on time. Senator Berkman, you're up next. There's controversy around redistricting that was signed into law this last week by Governor Pritzker. As we now know, McLean County will have a change in its representation, as noted by Representative Bennett joining us here this morning. At this time, we know there will be new representation from the House of Representatives as well as the Senate. Share your thoughts on the process and what effects it could have for our business community.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Charlie. Welcome, Chamber. Nice to see you all in person. Larry, thank you. Look forward to sticking around town, all the pleasantries. Sorry I was late. I suppose I should say it was chaotic. There was fighting. The children outnumbered the adults, and that's why I was a little late this morning. That is not a testament to the redistricting process, although I think it probably could be. I served as on the Senate side, the Republican spokesman for the redistricting process, which was conducted over the last, several months. To say the outcome was disappointing, but probably not surprising is just a huge understatement, I think. The redistricting process is an incredibly important process that the state goes through every 10 years. We participated in countless hearings, both in the House and the Senate. I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 hearings over the course of several months. At those hearings, we heard from the public. You could summarize the input from the public in two broad categories. One, almost universally, if not universally, the public said, Don't advance this for some political agenda. Wait to get the actual US Census data before you redistrict the state. Illinois broke from what is history, constitutional law, and apparently what at least 48 or 49 other states are doing, in that we plowed forward, we used outdated and inaccurate data about our state and redrew the lines for which the state legislative districts are. It was a process that was filled with hypocrisy. There were a number of people on the other side of the aisle who for years have proclaimed to be a reformer on redistricting, saying things like, we need to use an independent commission and, stop the process of politicians picking voters and instead having voters pick their representatives. Those same people who championed some of these good government efforts over previous years, this year were nowhere to be seen. Governor Pritzker probably led the charge in that. Pritzker, is a candidate for governor just back in 2018, told all the voters, he said, look, I'm not going to be a part of the machine. I'm going to be something different. He promised, it was a pledge. He said, I promise that if politicians draw maps, I will veto them. Full stop. He didn't qualify it. He didn't say, but what if COVID? He didn't say, but what if Democrats run the place? He said, if politicians draw the maps, I'll veto them. Friday, just a few days ago, he signed into law a totally partisan created map. And so it's a frustrating outcome. But most importantly, I think it's a disservice to all of you. The people of this state deserve fair representation. They deserve to be represented in districts where your vote counts. That is severely at jeopardy because they used bad data. And importantly, I think voters want choices in elections. How many times do voters go to the ballot box in November and they don't have a choice? They don't have a choice because these districts are gerrymandered. And we had a chance to stop that and to do something different. Many states are doing things differently. Many states are looking at using independent commissions or taking away the power the legislature has. And Illinois didn't do that. And that's a shame for all of you who deserve something better. So this process is going to be challenged in the courts. A number of groups have threatened lawsuits. I suppose it'll play out in time and we'll see whether this is the end of the line or just the beginning of a new chapter. But it's very unfortunate for the people that we didn't see something different this spring. What it means to McLean County, real briefly, if the maps stay true, Bloomington Normal which today is represented in 2 legislative districts, will be broken to 3. And so the northeast side of town will go one way, the south and southeast town side will go another, and the kind of the west, north and northwest will go to a third. So a little more confusion for you all in a already confusing process. So that's what we know. We'll see what happens next. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Representative Bennett.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, Jason, for explaining that. There's a lot in what you just said. And we're not done yet. We'll see what the future holds. But as things hold today with the maps as they are, I will represent the east side of McLean County, the rural area up to the Bloomington area. I am very familiar with Bloomington Normal. I have my bachelor's and my master's from here. I worked at State Farm almost 30 years. Yes, I started when I was 12. It's okay. It's all right. Worked in systems, 10,000 of my closest friends there in that department. And of course, that was just before things started to change there. But it's a great community in so many ways. So we'll see where this goes in the future. The courts will help decide where we go from here. But again, glad to be with you today, and we'll continue working for you.
We'll move on to the next question. And this one we'll start with Senator Turner. One major issue for the 2021 legislative session that remains unsolved or unresolved, both, is energy. Most of the headlines we read in the media focus on Exelon's desire to have yet more subsidies levied on ratepayers to keep 2 or 3 nuclear plants from closing. However, it is important to note that many other provisions of the draft legislation also include cost increases, some with more return on investment than others. What is your view and approach to major energy legislation to be voted on yet this year and how it affects McLean County?
Well, thanks for having me here today and nice to meet all of you. And I represent a portion of Bloomington, as you well know. I've tried to get up here as much as possible, but with this legislative session, it's been a bit difficult, but I've got to meet a lot of you and thank you for having me. The interesting thing about the energy legislation is that there's been many pieces that have been put forward in many different ways. And right now we don't know what the bill is that they haven't created a bill. So we frankly don't know what's in it. We'd like to be a part of that conversation so that we can help create good legislation that will help with renewable energy as well as sustainable energy. And in addition to that, that will continue to help those communities that will struggle perhaps from some of the shutdowns due to coal. I have coal in my district, which is of the Elkhart coal mine. Just 2 days ago, they laid off another 39 people and they laid off 51 people prior to that. So that's a difficulty on those communities. And we'd like to have a part to sit at the table and have those discussions, but we haven't been privy to all of that yet. I spoke to Senator Resin the other day and they still don't have, she's the chair of or one of our, I should say a co-chair from the Republican caucus in the Senate. And she still didn't have a bill to be able to discuss. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Senator. Any other comments on energy? Go ahead, Senator Rose.
I would also note that one of the things that we're tracking for those of you who are from maybe the more rural parts of the area, and I represent everything kind of Route 9 south to Terre Haute, Indiana. So that's a lot of rural parts. Part of that bill would overrule not just county siting authority for wind and solar, but it would also essentially potentially allow anybody to become a utility. Well, what does that mean? It literally means you could file a piece of paper with the Commerce Commission, become a utility and eminent domain your neighbor's backyard to put up a solar panel because you didn't want to put it in your backyard. It's clearly insane. So that is something that has been in many of the most recent drafts. I don't know where the final draft will land, but it is something that people should look out for because 10 years ago when the first wind bill came up, I was actually the sponsor of it to guarantee local siting authority. There was a House bill and I was in the House and it would allow counties to cite all of these things. This would take that away, completely remove your ability to control your own destiny locally. Huge problem in my opinion. And the anybody can become a utility thing is just nuts, but we'll see where the final thing comes down. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. Any other comments?
Just
Dan?
briefly, Charlie, as everyone's testified to, or spoken to, not testified, is the fact that we don't know. And at the 11th hour, there's supposed to be the energy bill. We're going back to Springfield to deal with an energy bill. But think about things when the devastation they're talking about to the coal industry under this bill is perceived and what could happen. And yet we turn around and give $8 million more for coal research study to our Flag State University. You have one hand saying, let's do away with coal in the state. You have another hand saying, well, let's give the university $8 million for further research into coal. I mean, it just, as Chapin said, it gets to insanity. But that's Springfield, and that's what you try and navigate through in whatever aspect of things. But it's a very diverse state.
Go ahead. Sure.
There's a lot of moving parts, as we talked about with the coal, but then you also have the nuclear and the nuclear group, and the governor trying to decide what they want to have between them. You got the coal that Dan just talked about, and you have solar and wind, and they all have different timelines of when they want things to happen. And it's always a series of dollar bills and costs for these things involved. And one thing I'm concerned about is the amount of potential increase in the cost. Overall, our cost is not that bad compared to other states, but potentially it could double. I've heard even more perhaps in the discussions. So we need to be very careful where this goes because it impacts everybody. Thank you.
We'll move on to the next question. Thank you very much. This lead will be back to Representative Brady. One word question. Workforce. There's a lot of discussion about the 22 states that have eliminated the additional federal stipend and or placed more rigorous requirements on the availability of unemployment insurance benefits. Our local businesses have felt the impact of workforce shortages as well as businesses across the nation. In fact, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce just launched an initiative called America Works Today to address the worker shortage on employers that all employers are facing. What state policy changes should we be engaging in that will help train more individuals for in-demand jobs, remove barriers to work, or could attract potential employees to McLean County?
A couple of things on that front. Number one, President Keith is over here from Heartland and just recently received a $17 million or split a $17 million grant, $7 million for the very type of thing you're talking about. You're asking about technology and Rivian and the future of what really the transportation may be and may become right here in our own backyard. Those type of things are very, very, very important. We talked about the $587 million that is in the budget for the business side of things and from the Federal Cures Act money. When you drill down to talk about businesses themselves, I don't think there's anyone here on this panel or in the room, especially businesses, that wouldn't tell you I am starving for help. I have people that I hear from constantly saying, look, I've gone to no Sundays and Mondays, I've closed it. I just can't keep help. I was talking to one of the hotel managers the other day and said, look, I'm not saying this is beneath me. I'm making beds. I'm cleaning rooms. I can't find help. And when I do find the help, what people do to me is they say they'll be here for the first day of work. They say they'll take the job and then they don't show up. And so there's a couple of things I think we can do from a policy standpoint. Number one, we've gone to the governor. We've asked the governor, first off, we'll stop the federal money into the state of Illinois, like many other states have done, with the additional $300 of federal money on top of the unemployment side of things that the state is doing. Number two, I think there needs to be a way that businesses can connect directly, if we can get them back in their offices, they answer the phones, the unemployment security offices, and say, look, this is my code. I've given this job to so-and-so. They have not shown up for work. I am telling you and reporting to you, you need to stop their benefits. And then you start getting people's attention, and then you start getting people back to work. At least you'll give business a level playing field that they can try and get people back to work and get their businesses back up and going.
Additional comments as it relates to workforce. Probably our number one, if I were to poll the audience today, it's probably the number one issue that they're going to face. Any other ideas on state policy that you'd like to share or talk about, or that has been discussed for employers in the room, or discussions we should engage in locally on the topic? Again, a very important issue for us. Senator Turner.
I just wanted to add one more thing, and I should have talked to you about this, Keith, and it's something I've been thinking about. Recently, we've had so many hacks, things that affected our water systems, electric grid, things of that nature. I think it'd be great if we could explore cybersecurity in depth. I mean, we could be the cybersecurity hub of the central United States. And I think that's something really important. I noticed I come kind of from a cybersecurity background because I did a lot of work as county clerk in elections. And I just will say that the state government cybersecurity is very poor. And I'm frankly shocked at how poor it is. So I think that's something that really needs to be investigated, perhaps something in depth with cybersecurity as a tool here.
We have an academic program.
And Keith's started one too.
Very good. We'll move to the next question. Senator DeRose, we go back to you. We've had a few members ask about the pension system. One asked or stated, the Chicago Tribune recently ran an opinion piece detailing how Arizona worked to address their pension reform issues by first agreeing to a limited action to modify pensions and then referencing that passed bill in a referendum. What would it take to employ a technique like this or to solve more pension issues within the state of Illinois?
Well, first of all, I think I understand most of the question. Arizona is fundamentally different because their constitution allows for far broader ballot initiatives than our state of Illinois constitution allows for ballot initiatives. So I don't think it's a apples to apples comparison that it is quite that easy to just simply run a referendum in Illinois to change the state constitution. I will say a couple things. There is far more space to be had in terms of something that myself and I think most of the folks here, except Sally just got here, but we'll throw her into the mix anyway, have supported in the past, which is to structured buyouts. And the way this works, and it saves the taxpayers, or could save the taxpayers a huge amount of money. And the last time we engaged in this was a couple of years ago, and they really didn't take the full bite at the apple, but just like private sector has done, and we sort of stole this idea from, I can't remember which was Ford or Chevy, one of the big three automakers reduced their unfunded liability by about 25% by doing structured buyouts. But we have, let's say you've got a 43-year-old teacher that is sort of tired teaching, doesn't want to be a teacher. Maybe they want to be an insurance agent. I don't know. But they would be happy to leave, right? Well, first of all, if they don't want to be there, they're probably not the best teacher, right? That's sort of a given. So you could go ahead and buy out the current value of their account, which then reduces over time what it would grow by, which is where the real problem is. It's the future unfunded liability, not the current value. So you buy it out of the current value, reduces unfunded liability over time, saves the taxpayers a boatload. And of course, you then get a teacher who actually wants to be in the classroom teaching students. So we, like everything in Springfield, they have to take little bites at it before they can actually, dive all the way in and mix my metaphors. But we started that process. And I think that's a huge thing. The other thing I think is the obvious one, which is why on earth aren't our new employees just in 401ks anyway, right? That's sort of like the rest of the world did that 30 years ago. And that's something that is like, the 401k solution isn't an immediate solution, but it does solve the problem over time, right? And so if that was something that state of Illinois engaged in decades ago, we'd be that much further along. I will say one thing, in 2008, there was a change in the pension systems. We do have a tier 2, which does not get all those benefits. So you're reaching the apex of the curve under the old benefits. You still have a decade to go, but eventually it starts going down. And so that will be helpful. But I would be one that would just advocate for going to 401k outright. I will tell you the Arizona solution, so-called, is not exactly a perfect apples to apples comparison, very hard to do. But what does anybody else have to say about that?
It is a growing concern. As we sit here today, the pensions do mount. They are increasing as far as the debt goes and those sorts of things. Right now, I think from what I recall, pensions take up about 26% of general revenue fund. And it's growing. And that's something we really need to get a better handle on. I think a number of folks, as in here, probably other places too, that's probably one of the biggest issues that we have. We need to get a better handle on that. We need to bring everyone together to try and figure out how to get this resolved. 401k is an option. We got the tier 2, which is going to help. We actually have tier 3 that we passed, oh gracious, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and it wasn't implemented. It's just sitting there and nothing ever happened. So there have been some efforts, but we have much more to do.
To pick up on that, if you want immediate action, you got to deal in what can be done, right? Pritzker could handle tier 3 right now. And I appreciate Representative Bennett refreshing my recollection on that. That could happen today. He just simply won't do it. It needs a minor legislative change that the Democrats will not call for a vote. And it's sort of mind boggling that you won't take just even the smallest bites of the apple, just like the buyout. They took this little tiny, you could be far more aggressive and save literally billions for the taxpayers. But, and the great thing about the buyout is you're not forcing anyone to do anything. Everybody's happy. The person who got bought out is happy. The school is happy because they got a better teacher. The kids are happy because they got a better teacher. I mean, it's the taxpayers are ecstatic, but you can't even get those little things done.
Thank you. We'll move to the next question, going to Senator Berkman. One of the major hits the business community took in the 2021 session was a rewrite of the pretrial interest rules for employers and healthcare professionals that are taken to court for alleged tort claims. As a result, the governor signing this legislation, many legal experts believe Illinois once again stands out as a litigation haven state. Do you believe our litigation climate is a major issue for our state? And if so, how do we restore balance, especially to our courts?
I do think the litigation environment is a problem for the state. The legislation that Charlie referenced changes pre-judgment interest that's allocated in lawsuits, kind of a technical issue that some of the insurance companies in town may be more familiar with than the rank and file public. I think that issue is an example of two problems in Illinois. First of all, that issue came about, if you've not, sometimes you've heard about what happens in lame duck session. Lame duck is the tail end of the calendar when big things happen in the middle of the night. The anti-police bill that went through this year is a great example of terrible policies that pass in the middle of the night, right? That police bill was 5 a.m. after working all night long. Hundreds of pages of legislation show up. We get an hour to read it and take a vote. Just disgusting process and outcome. The bill that Charlie referenced originated in that same process. No hearings, no transparency, just what appeared to be a give to the trial lawyers at the tail end of lame duck. To Pritzker's credit, he said it was so much of a give that he wasn't going to sign it. Kudos to the governor. But unfortunately, then the governor pivoted and said, well, let's do something just a little less draconian. That now law, because once it was revised this spring, the governor signed it. That law is really going to be punitive to employers, and especially those in long-term care facilities, the medical community. It's going to drive up costs. It was done during COVID at a time when our employment community and businesses were hurting coming through COVID. This is just another shot at them, unfortunately. You couple that with what we saw in redistricting. Redistricting wasn't just limited to state legislative districts. They redistricted the Illinois Supreme Court. This is the first time that's been done in, I think, 60 years. The purpose, again, there was no discussions about what was going to be done with the courts. It's just, here's a bill. It's going to change the makeup of the Illinois Supreme Court. And then we voted on it. Literally, someone asked over in the House, I think it was, where did this redistricting bill come from? Who had input to it? The bill sponsor couldn't even answer that question, which is really a stunner, The problem that results from all of this, the legislation Charlie referenced, the redistricting the Supreme Courts, what it demonstrates is that the court system is being used as a bit of a political pawn for political agendas. And, the public, I think, has no tolerance for that. I mean, the public believes that the courts are supposed to be apolitical. They're supposed to be a fair and impartial place for which disputes are reconciled. And when you see the courts being used as this for political gamesmanship, I think it diminishes the view that we all have of the courts. Illinois has long been plagued as a place that is not friendly to employers and is, especially when you go down to kind of the Metro East St. Louis area, they call it a judicial hellhole across the country, because of the number of lawsuits that are filed there related to medical malpractice and personal injury and asbestos. People from all around the country know that if you can make it into an Illinois courtroom, especially in East St. Louis or in the Metro East, your chances of prevailing in your claims far outweigh your chances if you went to a more fair venue somewhere else in the country. I think that speaks volumes for, for the reality of Illinois. We've got a lot of work to do to make the court system and the, just more balanced. I don't think, any of it is supposed to tilt too heavily one way or the other, employers and employees. But there needs to be some balance there that is severely lacking. And I think this spring we saw the tilt of that balance just shift even further. And it's very unfortunate.
Thank you, Senator. We've got 10 minutes and 2 last questions. This next question goes to Senator Turner. The ethics proposal that was approved by the House calls for an increase in transparency, specifically looking at financial disclosure forms, political fundraisers, and closing loopholes that have been previously practiced. Do you feel this ethical proposal or this ethics proposal will truly provide real and meaningful reform as it's proposed?
Thank you. I was on the ethics committee, which was one of our many committees, I think of one of my 7. However, we met 2 times. So if that tells you how important that was on the list of importance for those on the other side of my aisle, we pushed hard to get some legislation put together, and it is, I will say, watered down. We did get some things that we wanted to get into the legislation, and one of them was to correct the economic interest statement. And any of you that deal with that know we call it the none form or inapplicable form. This is more detailed and it gets more specific, and that is more helpful. That was one thing that we were able to get through. Another thing is allow the Inspector General now to have more of a part in her availability to begin the prosecution of individuals that have done wrong, individuals meaning politicians. That was one big point too. We didn't get the availability of her to call a grand jury, as far as I understood. That was one of the problems with it. But we looked at it as a start. And as you know, that our caucus doesn't have control of getting legislation promoted and passed on our own. So we worked with the other caucus as much as we could to get some things started. And we hope to push forward more as we progress to get more language in that's more specific, such as we do have limitations on lobbyists when they come into after they finish perhaps a term, or when they finish or they leave the House of Representatives or the Senate, when they can start lobbying. We did get that, and we agreed on a year, I believe it was, that they could come back after a year or at the end of their term. We were asking for 2 years, but the agreement was 1 year. So those are a few things. And I think it's really important that we start to look deeper into who it is that we elect and bring to the state's General Assembly. Who are the people that you're electing? Look deeper into them. Are they an ethical person? Is it someone that you want sitting there making decisions for you? I think that's very important. And then that stems back to what Jason was talking about, redistricting, so that you have a choice who the people are that you want to represent you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to the last question as we bring this to a close today. This is a question we could have started and ended with and probably still had more time to talk about because this is something that we all have on our minds. And that is something you were just talking about. Given the anti-business sentiment, right, and the acceleration of anti-business policies within the state, where is the opportunity to turn around the business climate? What can we as a business community do? And what can we as citizens of Illinois do to help change that conversation? I'm going to start. Senator Bennett Representative Bennett hasn't had the opportunity to lead a question. Representative, we'll let you take the first stab at that.
Thank you. There were, language is interesting. There's certain things that were passed in the budget that governor called loopholes. I call them business initiatives that were taken away to help the state of Illinois. There were 3 or 4 of those. Actually, there's 9 or 10 of them, I think, actually on the list at one point or other. And we were able to keep most of those business incentives there. But there were 3 or 4 that did get in the budget that actually were efforts that I think will not help business. And I think those are 3 or 4 things that we could really focus on as we go back perhaps to session later on, perhaps the next week or 2, perhaps in the veto session, to really see if we can't bring those back. Business is so valuable in so many ways for this. And with COVID and everything else, we've got to find ways, a number of ways, to make it more productive, more profitable, more helpful. The jobs, the businesses that we support is just phenomenal. I mean, it drives a whole lot of other things for the state of Illinois. So
Thank you.
I'll start there.
Senator Berkman.
Sure. And thanks for the question, Charlie. I think we talked about this a few years ago. I think as Illinoisans, we've got to celebrate the things that we do well, right? And I think that gets overlooked. We get in this, I referenced this a few years ago. A few years ago, the talk around town was all about what State Farm was going to do. And there was this cloud over the town because everyone, I called it business paralysis. No one wanted to invest money. The housing market wasn't moving. There was just this doom and gloom everywhere I went. That's all anyone talked about. We've moved beyond that, right? Today, I think there's a comfort in our largest employer and their long-term vision for the community. And there's awesome things happening in our community with Rivian and elsewhere, right? University. As I look around the state, we have great assets, right? I think we've got a tremendous infrastructure system. I think we have a dynamite educational system from pre-K all the way through higher ed, world-class, right? We educate the future leaders of the world. When people graduate from ISU, they go and can get a job. That's a testament. Heartland too, right? Our workforce, Charlie, you talked about the challenge of the workforce. One thing I can tell you is that people love hiring Midwesterners because they bring a tremendous common sense and hard work ethic that you don't find in all regions of the country. These are all things that we can build on. Politically, it's a challenge. What I'd encourage all of you is as you contemplate the various elections and you look at the choices that you have, encourage balance, encourage a moderation of views, because if we see more of that, people going to Springfield with more of a problem-solving attitude, I think we take huge steps forward in all areas of governance. What you're seeing today, this one-side domination, has resulted in special interests constantly having a path to advance an agenda, and it's been very damaging. And we can stop that collectively if we encourage those who are elected to seek balance and seek a more, less extreme, rational approach to how we solve our state's problems. I think we go a long ways.
Thank you. Representative Brady.
Thank you very much. I think it gets to highlight what Senator Berkman said. We've got some real diamonds in the rough in the state of Illinois, and they're not emphasized enough. Illinois State University, obviously here, Illinois Wesleyan, Heartland Community College, we're the mecca when it comes to higher education, and we're very fortunate. The infrastructure, we got so many pluses that we can focus in on. From the business side of things, it's just like the ladies and gentlemen who got up early to be here this morning and open up Hancock Stadium for us in this club room to be here. They're dedicated, they work hard, and they just want to be treated fairly. And that goes across the spectrum in business. It's about setting your priorities as far as Springfield goes. K through 12 was $9.2 billion in the budget. Higher ed, $1.9 billion. General services, $1.43 billion. Human services, Medicaid, help to those that need it, the fraud that goes throughout that system. We want to help those who truly need our help. In our budget, we're going to spend over $7.45 billion in human services. Behind general services public safety, higher education, but a little more, a little less than K through 12 kids. It's about priorities. And we certainly need to change our priorities in Springfield, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, at the end of the budget cycle, the majority party thought, well, let's put a pay raise in there for legislators. You don't hear much about that, do you? A pay raise for legislators during a pandemic. Can you imagine that? And you talk about how you're going to help business. Think what those dollars could have been in district offices and pay raise to legislators and directed in some type of help to business. So the priorities need to be changed.
Senator Rose.
First of all, I'll point out the obvious. There's an election next November. Governor Pritzker will be on the ballot. Secondarily, and JB didn't mention it entirely on the Supreme Court, the reason they redistricted the Supreme Court, let's just be flat out fair. There's 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans, except the 4th Democrat, the person who voted against giving you all the right to change redistricting in the state, lost his bid to be renominated to the Illinois Supreme Court last November. The Democrats and the trial lawyers freaked out. So what's their solution to that? They redistrict the entire Supreme Court. Okay, courts aren't supposed to be political, folks. They're just not, but they are. And the reality is when you redistrict them, they really are. But the problem is, even as Democrat as this state is, they still can't draw that 4th district to make it completely Democrat. So there is a shot at actually flipping a court and getting somebody that might actually for change be pro-business or look at things a little bit differently than the way that the court has in the state for the last 60 years, which has been pretty anti-business, competition. And certainly when it came up for a vote for fair maps, it was 4-3 Democrats to Republicans against changing redistricting. Not one politician, not us, not them, should be drawn districts. Bottom line, go to my Facebook page. I've got a map of Iowa where they have a computer that doesn't know where the incumbents live, so they can't protect anybody, and doesn't know where the Republicans and Democrats live. I can tell this joke because I'm in Bloomington safely. If you don't tell the computer that, basically Saybrook is Republican and Urbana is communist, okay, you can't draw a map to guarantee any party, not mine, not theirs, controls anything. That's still a Democrat state, right? But maybe you get a little bit fairer representation. Maybe you get actually a little bit broader representation. Maybe you don't get these things that are so skewed 80% Republican and 80% Democrat to get insane, crazy people in Springfield, right? But if you go to Iowa, they're these nice little squares because they're not being gerrymandered, okay? Then you look at these jigsaw puzzles. This current map, I go from here, Route 9, like I told you, to Terre Haute, folks. Terre Haute. The new map, I don't have anything. It took me 48 minutes to get here this morning. Instead, I'm going to go from Mahomet to Kentucky, okay? That's what happens in gerrymandered nonsense. And why? Because they want 2 Democrats to 1 Republican, right, squeezed in the middle, so they get their 2-1 majority in Springfield. Now, look, I'm a Republican. Take that hat off. I went all the way to the Supreme Court, signed an amicus brief supporting the Democrats trying to knock out the Republican map in the state of Wisconsin. Why? Because we need to end gerrymandering. I don't care what your freaking party is. This is crazy. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for people. It doesn't work for taxpayers. It doesn't work for anybody. And so at the end of the day, we've got to change that map or change the court when we get the new map under the new Democrat gerrymander map. And then maybe we'll get a shot at getting a fair map where no politician draws that map. Last thing I'll say, it's a warning. Take care of your communities, folks. We're in a wonderful community in Bloomington Normal. I'm much closer to Champaign-Urbana. They've had 3 shootings in less than 3 days, okay? If it's not on your list of questions, but it should be. If we don't get serious about the crime that is creeping back into this country, your businesses will not open. Downtown Champaign-Urbana, 1 East Main, that was the shooting Friday night, okay? The bars down there now close at 11 because it's not safe to be downtown past 11. So from one community to another, watch it, watch where we're going, watch your criminal justice system, because we are going to destroy what makes Downsville, Illinois a wonderful place to live if we're not careful. Sorry.
And to bring it home, Senator Turner, we'll turn it over to
Well,
you.
mine will be very brief because those guys come in and I'm proud to work with these fine people. They do a fantastic job. And I love their passion, and Chapin is passionate about what he says. He just lost a friend and had another friend injured, a police officer in Champaign-Urbana. I'll just wrap it up with this. We should be proud of where we live. We should, talk about where we live. We should say, hey, you know what? We raise corn and soybeans here in Central Illinois, and we are proud of it. We're proud farmers, and we're proud businesses that relate to everything that has to do with agriculture. And so the more that we talk out about who we are and what we stand for, and that we have great education and good people, and we support our police officers, and everything that is good about Central Illinois is here, and we just need to support that.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you to all of our lawmakers for not only your time this morning, but for fighting the fight and representing in McLean County and Springfield. Thank you all very much. And thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate the opportunity to see your faces. Thank you again to President Dietz and to Illinois State University for hosting us. Have a great day. Here you go. All right.